Hello, and welcome to On the Marie Curie Couch, the podcast that aims to break down taboos and start open, honest conversations about death and dying. I'm Jason Davidson. I'm a social worker by profession, and I've worked in palliative care, hospice care, and bereavement support services for more than a decade. Each episode, we'll be speaking to a well-known guest to find out about how they feel about their own mortality and how their personal experience of bereavement has shaped the way they live their life. Today, I'm on the Marie Curie Couch with Janice Long. Janice has been a radio broadcaster for more than 40 years. During her career, she's presented shows for BBC Radio 1 and Radio 2, and she can currently be heard on BBC Radio Wales, where she plays the music she loves. Originally from Liverpool, Janice still lives up north with her husband Paul, who she married 2 years ago after 30 years together, and they've got 2 children. Janice Long, welcome to the Marie Curie Couch.
Thank you very much indeed, Jason. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. So, can we start today by you telling us about a significant bereavement that you've experienced in your life?
It's funny, actually, because 4 years ago, we moved back to Liverpool.
Right.
To be near my parents, Paul and I. And in that year, my mum died, February the 26th, just as we moved. And then 3 best friends died. And then a couple of years ago, my brother died. So I feel as though I've had a lot of death, a lot of death going on in the family and friends. So it's weird, isn't it? Because they're things that you never, ever get over. I mean, how many times have I gone to ring Keith? How many times have I thought, I should tell my mum this? Or Josie would love, and think, she's not here. Or Jazz would have loved, he's not here. And those, they never go away.
And I can hear there's been a significant amount in a short space of time as well. You mentioned Keith.
Yeah.
Can we talk a bit more about Keith's death? So can you tell us a bit about who Keith was?
Cheggers. I suppose people know Keith as Cheggers. He was a fantastic entertainer. He started off in films, actually, for the Film Foundation, Children's Film Foundation. Both he and his twin brother, my brother Jeff, were in a film called Egghead's Robot. Subsequently went on to do other things. And he did sitcoms, and he was in Polanski's Macbeth, But he always wanted to be an entertainer. And he said to the BBC, can I work on a show and, do what he wanted to do? And they gave him a chance, and that was Swap Shop. And Cheggers Plays Pop as well was another one. So he was very, very successful. So
was he living in Liverpool when he was working? Was he in London?
What happened was that there was a children's talent show called Junior Showtime with Bobby Brown. And I think it was made in Leeds. And Keith auditioned for it. And there was a woman there, and she noticed Keith, and she noticed he was a twin brother. And she said to my mum, these 2 boys, I think they'd be perfect for this film, Egghead's Robot. And she said, would you mind if they came to London? So they went down to London, and they got the parts. And then she subsequently said to Mum and Dad, I think, because they were in a secondary modern school in Bootle, and she said, I think they'd have a better opportunity, or better opportunities, maybe if they came to the Barbara Speake Stage School in London, which is in Acton. Right. And so they headed off there. And then got lots of work. Keith was in a lot of adverts, so was Jeff in adverts. Jeff didn't want to perform, though. And Keith just went from strength to strength doing what he did.
Can you tell us about his illness? Did he have an illness that he was living with for a long time?
No, it was quite sudden.
Okay.
Pulmonary fibrosis,
Right.
idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And what happened was he and Maria, his wife, and their son Ted, because Rose had left home and everything, so Ted, they decided that they'd move to Shropshire. And they bought the most beautiful house with stables in Shropshire. And they wanted to be close to my dad and to Paul and I. Now, sadly, this condition developed and he just got worse and worse and worse very quickly. It was awful to see him being able to move 1 minute and then not being able to move without oxygen, the
Right.
portable oxygen. And then he took to his bed, really. They put a bed in the kitchen so he could see the views, see his lakes, see the views, see the horses and what have you. And that's where he died.
In his bed in the kitchen.
Yeah, December the 11th, 2 years ago. And it was heartbreaking to see his demise. It was really sad.
Was it over just a few months?
It's probably about 4 or 5 months. And Paul and I, we'd been together 31 years, a couple of years ago, and we decided to get married. And I said to Keith, you don't have to come. Really don't put yourself out. Really take it easy. I would not miss that for the world. So he came to the wedding and he had his portable oxygen machine and he sat on the front row. They got him a wheelchair to take him upstairs and everything. And he sat on the front row and, that was September the 23rd, 2 years ago. And then in the December he died.
Very soon after. How was that, having your brother at your wedding?
I was made up. Absolutely delighted to just see him there on the front row. And he was so proud. Yeah. Because we're very close, you see, my brothers and I.
Right.
Very close. And always on the phone to each other. And Keith was the go-to man for... if you wanted any gadgets or you were thinking of doing something, he'd always know everything about everything. One of those people. He even,
You get a good review.
Yeah, he because my dad's a technophobe.
Right.
Completely useless. Him and my mum used to row all of the time, just recording a video. And Keith he said to Keith one day, my television, I don't know what's wrong with this television, it's not working. So Keith got in the car from, lived in a place then between Newbury and Andover. Drove all the way to see my dad near Liverpool. Nothing wrong with the telly, just pressed a button and it was fixed and that was it. But he made that journey just to sort it out for him.
Nice. Janice, can we just go back to when Keith was first diagnosed? And something I know for our listeners is, how do you tell people? How do you talk about it? How do you tell the family? Did Keith know early on that his illness was terminal?
It is terminal, that's it.
So he knew straight away as soon as he was diagnosed.
Cure. And that's why they're raising awareness for it at the moment, because it kills more people than stomach cancer and leukemia.
Right.
So he was told, unless you have a lung transplant, it is terminal. But he couldn't have the lung transplant because everything started shutting down.
Right.
So his heart became weak. And it was just a process of everything closing down, and that was it. So it is terminal, unless you can get lungs.
And how did he break that news to you? Do you remember?
Yes. He told us when we went to see him. And, but you see, he was full of hope then, thinking that he'd get the lungs.
Yeah.
And so I think he just thought, well, he'd be all right, but he didn't get the lungs because everything collapsed. Yes, so he told us, and with my dad, and my dad was just like, he couldn't believe it. Didn't want to believe it, neither did Jeff. Jeff was the same with my mum as well. It's like, no, it'll be fine, and we can't think negatively because that's going to make it worse. But
Can't bear to think about it.
Yeah, and my dad, of course, it's horrible because, as he keeps, he still says it to this day, he shouldn't go before me. And he's always saying, I miss his laugh. I miss him phoning me and having a laugh. But it was hard for all of us. Both our kids as well, and obviously for Keith's wife, his son, his daughter. But everybody rallied round. There were always people there. Mm-hmm. His daughter came back from San Francisco and worked from the kitchen, did everything by conference call. And her husband, he's in a band, but he took time out. And Fred and Molly, everybody just went over to Shropshire.
Mm. And Keith was in the kitchen, in his bed, with his view, and then everyone was around.
I'd never known Keith watch daytime telly in his life. Do you know what I mean? He just wasn't that, but he was always active, doing things. But then, the last few months he did, you see him watching Houses Under the Hammer or whatever, in his special chair.
Mm. And as you say, it's really difficult. One of the hardest things is watching that decline.
It's horrible because I'd seen it with Mum, and I'd seen it with Josie, one of my friends. There's a look, like a mask, kind of thing, and it just, I don't know what it is, but you can just tell that it's imminent.
So they look different.
Yeah.
Near the end. You mean
Yes.
near death? Yeah.
Definitely. But do you know what? He was laughing and joking till the end. Still taking, messing around with the nurses, having a joke, and that they were saying he's remarkable because he's still entertaining. Because they come and sometimes stay over. Well, they did stay over from the hospice, and they said he was just fun all of the time.
And that was a big part of him and who he was.
Yeah. Well, I think when you've lived your life in the public, that's it, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's when Keith, all those years ago, gave up alcohol. He did it on the telly. He said, "I'm an alcoholic, and I want to stop, and this is the only way I can think of doing it."
On air.
If I do it, yeah. Because he tried before without telling anybody. I mean, we knew, but that was, and he never ever touched a drop since that day. And that's how he dealt with it.
Yes.
Yeah. Even when he's struggling with his oxygen tank and everything, he didn't care that the public saw it. Some people might think, I don't want anybody to see me like this. But he was just like, no, this is the way it is. He'd go off to Asda or whatever, and take that and do the shopping.
And that's true as well, because I think, we often say it's hard for people to come to terms with their own physical changes, the things that are happening with their body, and to kind of go out and do the things that they used to do isn't as easy and isn't as often straightforward.
Exactly. And he was obviously not able to do so. He was obviously not able to do any of the stuff he was used to doing. So I'm saying, to see him watching Homes Under the Hammer was a rare thing. Did
Keith talk about death and dying? Did he talk about his own death?
He did to Jeff. He told Jeff he was scared.
That's his twin brother.
Yeah. And with me, he just kept saying, "I love you." We said it to all of us, but just hold your hand and go, "Love you, love you, love you." But obviously, that special bond, isn't it, that twins have? And I took Jeff's hand and said, "I'm scared, Jeff." Yeah.
Did he talk about any practical things like making a will or planning his funeral?
I didn't talk to him about that, no. Oh, and on the funeral front, he wanted a quiet one.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't want a great, big affair. He said to Marie, just keep it quiet.
So he planned his funeral? Or...
he just wanted family and friends. He didn't want a big showbiz funeral.
Right.
And I presume he made a will. I don't know.
Can you tell us about the funeral?
It was in Whitchurch, and it was very emotional. His daughter, Rose, spoke about him, Ted spoke about him, I spoke about him, and Jeff spoke about him. And there was lots of love. And then afterwards, it was just immediate family. So my dad and Jeff and I and Maria, obviously, Ted and Rose, we went to the crematorium for another little service before he taken off.
Just to move on a bit now, Janice, I think often people who have experienced the death and loss of someone close to them, they describe being faced with their own mortality as well sometimes. And I'd like to ask, do you ever think about your own death?
No, because it scares me.
Right. What scares you?
Not being here. Don't like thinking about it.
And just thinking about kind of on a practical level. So I'm guessing if you don't like thinking about your death and you don't like to talk about it, which lots of people don't, then you might not have made plans for your funeral.
Oh, I've told Paul it's got to be a huge one.
Right.
Opposite of Keith. Big party. Huge party. Yeah, Liverpool Cathedral.
Fantastic.
Paul said, I don't know who's going to pay for this.
So you have had those conversations?
Only that.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good one to talk about, though, because I think for our listeners, lots of people, it's part of our work, about trying to support people and encourage people to have conversations and make some plans, plan for the future. And the funeral planning is one of those things. So a big event, Liverpool Cathedral.
I should be so lucky. Yeah, and everybody I can think of to be there. Yeah.
What's important to you about it?
The
About the funeral, yeah, and
I
about
just want it to be a
having lots of
celebration.
people there, a celebration.
It's like when we got married and we said, we'll have the service, but go straight into a party with, there was food, obviously, but we did it like a kind of street food thing, and we got straight into the party. And it was great. And that's what I like. I don't want people being maudling.
A celebration.
Yeah, too right.
Marie Curie want to change the way the UK talks about death and dying. We believe an open conversation with loved ones now can make life better at the end. For more information on how to start the conversation and free tools and resources to help, visit mariecurie.org.uk/talkabout. Marie Curie, for life to the last.
Can I ask about your mum's death? Are you okay to talk a bit about that,
Yeah.
Janice? Was she ill?
She was. She had pancreatic cancer,
Right.
but that bit was quite sudden. She kept going to the doctor and they were saying nothing, no, you're all right. But she knew there was something wrong. And then eventually it was diagnosed and she had jaundice. And I think she was scared. I know she'd had the conversations with my dad, which he tells you about now. So but before your mum died, she said this or she said that or whatever. She died in hospital, in Wiston Hospital. And very, very funny, actually, I thought at the time she waited for me to finish work. She literally died 5 minutes after my show ended. And the car was outside to take me home. And I just had to say, Western Hospital, please. And but everybody came up for that as well, Jeff and Keith, and our kids and their kids and what have you. And she had her hair done. You know what I mean? We did it because she was very proud, my mum. So we always made sure that she looked really nice, even when she was very, very ill. Did her hair, put the eyeshadow and the eyebrows on. But then she just drifted off, as Keith did, you know. 1 minute she was all right, then she was falling asleep. We were armchair dancing. She was in the bed, and I was sitting on the bed, and we're holding her arms, and we were dancing to Little Richard. But her eyes were closed, but she and then she could just mouth, "I love you." Yes, but February the 26th, she died 4 years ago.
And I think that thing about, you know, and making sure that her hair was done and her makeup was done, because that was her identity, and that was what
and
was
she was
important to
very,
her.
very cool, mum. You know, the way she dressed, her hair, she had red hair, and she always looked the bee's knee. You know, she really did. She was very trendy. So it would be unfair to not let her be as trendy as she could be in dying.
Yeah. I think that's an important message, isn't it? Just because you're dying doesn't mean that you're not still a person or yourself, or you can keep your identity.
Exactly. And so, yeah, and even, you know, I mean, I know this happens to everybody, but when she died and when, you know, in the coffin, the funeral parlour, not far actually from where Mum and Dad lived, and he took all the eyeshadow and the eyebrow pencil and everything round to be put on.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and picked out clothes.
How nice. So right till the end.
Oh, right till the end. She looked groovy. She looked great. Yeah. Marg.
Can we talk a bit now, Janice, about bereavement and about grief? I don't know whether you're able to share your experience of that, or what helps you or has helped you.
I just seem to remember crying a lot.
Right. In the beginning?
Yeah. And I think talking is such a good thing, and I'm very fortunate that I've got Paul, or the kids, you know, but they live away from home now. But, you know, I can always talk to Paul. And I find it easier, say, talking to my dad, because he's going through it. And you know what I mean? It's hard. So I'd rather pour my heart out to Paul than lay it on my dad.
Mm-hmm. And that often happens for families because people want to protect each other.
Yes, exactly. And as I say, he does talk about it. You know, we meet a lot, Dad and I. And, you know, if we do our Saturday lunch thing, it'll come up, you know, "Oh, I miss your mum," and "Oh, I hate the nights drawing in now because the days feels really long, and you know, I haven't got your mum," and then he'll go on about Keith, and, you know, "Oh, I miss Keith." Of course he does. But I think talking is letting it out, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure people must, you know, every person's going to be different in how they deal. Some people probably like looking at photographs. That would bring tears to my eyes. I've got all the memories in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have looked at photographs, obviously, but it doesn't make it easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people, they would find comfort in that, but I find it hard. And if I see anything of... because Keith can pop up on your Twitter or on telly, you know, they might share a picture of him. Ooh, it breaks my heart, that.
Yeah, what is that like when somebody's been on TV and then all of a sudden
I know.
they might just appear
It's
on the screen, obviously.
it gets me every time. You know, you just can't help but burst into tears.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, if you're in that job, you know, it's there, isn't it, for you to... You can Google and find anything you want, can't you?
So lots of tears, more in the beginning, and conversations with others like your dad.
Yes.
And I think there's something there, isn't there, about having talking to people who knew the person as well, and just reminiscing or storytelling. Those things some people can find helpful.
Yeah. I'm just remembering all the good times as well, because Keith and Jeff are both practical jokers, so there's always something to laugh about, to remember. And, you know, all the holidays we had as kids, I remember those. I used to sit in the middle of the Austin A40, and Keith would be one side, Jeff would be the other, all digging each other. And, but yeah, they were both practical jokers, so there's always been fun. And we were very, very close. We went to the youth club together, hung out.
There's something in what you said about, you were talking about how it always stays with you and it never goes away, and I'm just thinking about moving forward and moving on with life after a loss, but actually taking it with you and thinking about how you take it with you and how it's going to be part of your life. And that's one way, I suppose, isn't it, that for Keith, he's memories and he's in your head, which you pointed to.
Yeah.
And they're things that you can take forward. That's part of maybe taking the grief with you as well, isn't it? But packaging it in a different way
In
when
a different
you're able
way.
to.
That's what I said. We're all different, aren't we? And some people, as I say, might want to look at old letters or photographs. But I've got it all filed away in my head, as I say, so I can always pull it out.
Is your legacy important to you?
In terms that I hope I've been good and kind. That's all you can ask for.
Is that how you'd like to be remembered? Yeah.
Yeah. I've never willingly hurt anybody, you know what I mean? So that's important to me. I like to go to bed and sleep and not think I shouldn't have done that or whatever. So, and it'd be quite nice as well for people to remember the amount of pants I gave a leg up to.
So that's what you've done with your career as well, as
Music.
giving legs up to bands, but
Yeah.
music.
Yeah. Yes. Always been looking for new bands. Still do. So yes, nice to be remembered by some of them as well.
Just before we finish, Janice, can I ask if some of the listeners at the minute are supporting a loved one with a terminal illness or grieving themselves, is there anything you might say to them, a word of advice or support?
It's be yourself, isn't it, really? Be yourself. Don't make it sad. You know, we did that with Keith and with Mum. Having fun till the end. Because you just want everything to be as fine as it can for them. Cuddles, holding hands, all of those things are so important. Because it must be so scary. And just having somebody to cuddle you. And, yeah, and listen. Sing. There's all sorts of things we did. Do you know what I mean? That, singing Neil Diamond with my mum because she loved him. Didn't sing with Keith because he wasn't mad on music, funnily enough. But he'd just be laughing and joking himself anyway. Bless him.
Thank you, Janice Long, for coming along today and sharing your stories. And it's been great to meet you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
So that's all for this episode of On the Marie Curie Couch. We hope it's got you thinking about matters of life and death, and perhaps starting those conversations with your own friends and family. Marie Curie's here to help. from planning ahead to coping with bereavement. You can talk through any concerns you have around the end of life with our support line team, which includes specially trained nurses. Call us on 0800 090 2309 or search Marie Curie online. This podcast is made by Marie Curie, a national charity that supports people affected by terminal illness. For more information and support, you can visit our website mariecurie.org.uk. The podcast is produced and edited by Marie Curie with support from Ultimate Sound and Vision. The music featured is Time Lapse by Pan-Oceanic. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do like and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and until next time, goodbye.